So if you have a big app with lots of functions, it's doing a whole bunch of things, it's connecting to a bunch of online databases, save some of that if you really want to get it onto the App Store immediately for later, because adding updates to it is much simpler than getting it initially onto the App Store. So just keep that in mind. Excuse me. And when you're confident that your app is bug-free and complies with Apple's conditions, submit it to the App Store. Alright. Once you've submitted your app excuse me, to your App Store, it's time to be patient. There really is no timetable as to when you're going to hear back from Apple. This is another tough one. The approval process can take anywhere from a couple days to several months, even up to a year, depending on your app. If you have a simple, straightforward app that doesn't even come remotely close to violating any of Apple's policies, you can expect to hear back in a couple days or weeks. On the other hand, if your app is borderline against any of Apple's policies, you can expect to wait a while to hear back. So if you hear back from Apple and your app was rejected, it's time to talk to your developer, your coders. Hopefully the rejection is a small bug and can be easily fixed, but you should beta test anyways after your developer fixes the issue, because resolving the issue could have caused other parts of the code possibly to become corrupted. So beta test again and again, and then submit it again. If, on the other hand, your app was accepted, your app is now available in the App Store, and it's time to start marketing your app. After acceptance. Alright, once your app is live, your work is still not done. It's time to get the word out. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I talked about marketing, so now is a good time to put that strategy into effect. You're also going to want to build your app's credibility on the App Store. Many people, you may do this yourself, check out the ratings and read the reviews of apps in the App Store before they decide if they're going to download it. So, once your app's live, get your friends, your family to download your app and write reviews for you and rate it. This is integral in getting more downloads. You should also be monitoring your app constantly once it goes live. If you start getting bad reviews right away, it can completely kill your app. If you have reviews starting to come out right away, oh, there's a little glitch here, I can't do this here, it could kill it. People see bad reviews right away, and the first couple comments, they may not download it. So learn what your users don't like about your app right away and fix it. Now, that basically sums up the process briefly of building an app from the ground up. And before I start asking you guys questions, I'm going to answer 3 of the most common questions I receive all the time. And by far the most common question I get is, how much is it going to cost to build an app? And it is easily the hardest question to answer. This question is similar to basically how much does it cost to buy a car, and the answer to that is it varies greatly. The cheapest way, of course, is to do it all yourself, and that includes the coding, and the planning, and the graphic design. Now, if you're not skilled in Objective-C, which is the language used to code apps for iOS App Store, then you're in for a very tough and long journey. On the other hand, if you are at least familiar with Objective-C or programming in general, such as C++ or even Java, but don't plan on coding the entire app, you could actually spend as little as $500 for a simple app. And the way this works is there are websites available where you can buy source code for another app. Now, you're not going to be able to do much to it. You can simply change what's inside the app. Maybe you can possibly change a couple of the graphics. You can change the words. But if you just have a simple, basic informational app, or maybe an app that shows slideshows of facts, you can buy source code for this for $500, look at the code, if you're familiar with coding, and just change it around a little bit, retool it for your purposes. Now, if you're going to be hiring a developer to code your app, look to spend more money. A development company called AppV surveyed 96 different mobile app developers and found that the average cost to develop an app was $6,453. That's a good estimate for smaller apps, such as the ones that are simply displaying pictures, show interesting facts, broadcasting news from one website. But a typical good range for small apps is between $3,000 and $8,000. While complex and brand apps, like the big companies, can run between 50 and 150,000. So developing an app can get very costly very quickly. For iPad-specific apps, you're looking at a bottom baseline price, usually, could be less, of around $12,000. This is simply because with an iPad, there's a lot more screen real estate to work with. So generally, there's a lot more functions involved, a lot more goodies involved. So you're looking at a minimum of $12,000. Graphics got to be different and everything. When it's all broken down, the average developer charges about $100 per hour. So if you're making your budget and you're trying to figure out what's going to cost, and maybe you figured it out, you talk to some coding experts, see how it's going to take, 300 hours of coding, you can kind of figure out where you're going to be at. So that's cost. Another question I get is, how do you choose developer and where do you find them? There are several different options here. Each has its own pros and cons. When it comes to hiring developers, you can hire anyone from freelance coders to established development companies. It's important to remember here, when hiring a developer though, you generally get what you pay for. For example, there are several mobile app freelance developers overseas that you can hire for $30 an hour or even less. And some of these may be very good coders, but you need to be careful when working with overseas developers, as there may be, of course, communication issues, which are crucial for app development. And it's possible, you may get stuck with what's called cheat code. And cheat code is basic functioning code. They send you the code, it looks good, looks like your app's working. But there's probably some bugs hidden in there somewhere that, trust me, Apple will find. And it's going to be hard to upgrade your code later. So basically, if you get stuck with this cheap code, in the end, it's going to cost a lot more money to fix the cheat code than it was for the cheat code in the beginning. So just keep that in mind if you're going to go with the freelance option, and especially if you're looking overseas. Like, there's a website out there, maybe you guys have heard of it, called elance.com. And it's basically any sort of technology or computer thing you need done, work you need done. There's just thousands upon thousands of freelancers you could hire all online. You never see them. But you got to be careful because a lot of them really don't know what they're doing. So, if you're going to hire a freelancer or two, make sure they have a lot of experience and an excellent reputation. Excuse me. Then there's the full-blown development companies. Choosing a development company to work on your project is not easy either, and usually development companies are the most expensive route. These companies have teams of people ready to work on your project. Some even have graphic designers on staff to help you design your app. To keep costs down, make sure when you approach these companies, you have your sketches and pathways in hand. This will save you a boatload of money because if you don't, you're going to sit down in meetings with these guys and write out sketches with them and the flow pathways with them. This racks up the hours pretty quickly. But if you do this beforehand, like I recommend, you'll be saving a lot of money with your developer. When you're speaking with the developer, make sure you ask them how much experience they have in developing apps, and if it's possible for them, which apps do they have developed that are available on the App Store right now that you can see. The problem with this is it may not always be possible for them to tell you this because most developers, freelancers, they sign non-disclosure agreements when working on apps. I'll talk about that just a little bit later. But yeah, so they may not be able to tell you about all the apps, but try to get something out of them that you can download yourself and see, so just so you know the type of work you're going to be dealing with. Alright, also besides development companies are mobile app project managers. And these are a little new on the scene. And they're kind of in between freelancers and full-blown development companies. They are experts in mobile app development and have the experience to back it up. Using a project manager usually results in a more seamless experience as they're kind of running things. Typically, these project managers have good relationships with development companies and freelancers, and they know how to source out each aspect of the project to the best talent, or the best talent they know of, at a good price. They can also handle things in your mobile app project, including marketing and graphic design, which sometimes your developer will not do. In terms of cost, if you're using a project manager, look to spend either about the same you would for a development company or more. So in the end, they will be hiring the development company. It's going to be about the same cost you would if you're going to a development company or more, especially if you use your project manager for things like marketing and such. Warnings. There's a lot to watch out for when you're hiring a developer, and the biggest warning I can give you really is to never pay for training an app developer. If you do any Google search for mobile app developers, you're going to find thousands upon thousands of them. And it's tough to choose a good one. Many of these people that you see on Google are computer programmers, they know how to code, but they've never really worked on a mobile app development project. So be sure when you're choosing a developer, especially if you're just searching around for one, you don't know someone, that they are up to the task. A good rule of thumb is to make sure they've developed at least one mobile app in the App Store, and you can verify it somehow. When you're shopping, another warning, when you're shopping for developers, you also want to make them sign a non-disclosure agreement before you reveal your idea or really anything about your app. There are plenty of freelance developers out there who steal a good idea when it comes their way. It happens a lot on that website I talked about, Elance. People will post their project, someone will take it, build their own app for it, and make money off it. It happens a lot. So I highly recommend having whoever you talk to about developing an app sign a non-disclosure agreement. It also might be a good idea if you're working with graphic designers and other outsourced, they sign it too, especially if they're privy to some of your app's information. Final question I get is how long does this process usually take? And it's another tough question to answer. Again, it depends on a lot of factors. If you're coding the app yourself and your experience in Objective-C is less than stellar, it's going to take a while to learn the language. And I can't really put a good time on it if you're developing it yourself because it all depends on how well you learn the language. And probably it's going to take even longer once you write the code to debug it. On the other hand, if it's a simple app and you're using the source code method I talked about, spending $500, buying the source code, changing it around, you can have your app up and running in a week, a couple weeks, possibly less. Another major factor is the experience and availability of your developer. Experienced developer who have no other projects on their plate can get your app done pretty quickly. The best indicator of time, though, for how long it's going to take for you to get your app developed is the complexity of your app. If your app has a whole lot of bells and whistles and interacts with several other online systems and large databases, developing the app can take a lot of time, up to even a year. A good estimate, though, for medium to low complexity apps, development time, planning, all that, is probably 4 to 6 months. That's typical. Alright, and that basically concludes what I'm talking to you about today, about building an app from the ground up. And I'm sure some of you guys have some questions, and I'll happily take them.
I'm wondering, you had talked about people having experience who are developers, and considering that, most of us are working with nonprofits who may try to get it free, are there colleges, organizations who will do this gratis for us because we're a nonprofit, or reduce the price in any way, or we shouldn't be looking at people in college or grad school?
You can actually, some people in college have what's called the Senior Design Project, and you can get mobile programmers from that to work on it. They may not be able to do all of the work for the app, because considering it takes time, and usually, I don't know, Senior Design sometimes once sometimes the entire year. So you can go to a college and talk to them and ask. I've never done it that way. You could ask a developer for some sort of discount, being a nonprofit or something like that. It wouldn't hurt to ask. But again, I don't know exactly if that's true. I've never worked in that area. So. Anyone else?
Okay, so you're totally a novice as far as coding. You want to learn the C,
Objective-C.
Objective-C. Can you go to Khan Academy, or are there any places that you would recommend for someone to learn, or to give to somebody else? Hey, learn this for the organization.
Yes, I've done coding in the past. I've learned it. I did not learn Objective-C. I learned C++ and Java. And yes, you can go to classes for it, and I would recommend taking a class. You can go to community college, take a class for it. And the best way really to be good at coding is to practice. You can download coding programs, coding software for your computer, and just build a simple app. The first app they're ever going to teach you to make, or not an app, just a program in general, is the hello world code. It's the first thing they teach everyone. So again, learning computer programming, it can be tough for some people. It really can be, because you gotta think a different way. You basically take your idea and you gotta translate it into computer language. But yeah, there's courses available. You can go to community college, take some courses. You can take online courses. You can pick up books and just practice the code yourself. They'll teach you the whole process. I mean, you're not supposed to code it away. You write out the algorithm, you write it out by hand, and then you code, and then you debug. But yeah, there's definitely plenty of courses available you can take. As in recommendations, I think an easy way to learn would go to a community college where they'll teach you the basics, and then you'll have access to software there you can practice on. Go ahead.
I just wanted to share with the group, and I don't know if Utah or Colorado had a group last year that made an app, that in Ohio we did have a group that chose to go with an app, and I just tweeted the link out under the #ILiveUSA hashtag. And I'm trying to goad one of my state library coworkers into that Twitter conversation, because I don't know all of the nuts and bolts, but they were able to get it done in the time frame allotted for the program, and I know that it was less than $3,000 because we only gave our teams $3,000 in Ohio. And I know that they had some struggle, absolutely struggle, getting it into the
App Store?
Yeah, into the App Store. But ultimately, it did make it in. Of course, today I can't find it. It's still in the Google Play Store, and that's the link that I tweeted around. So take a look. It's very basic. They were very proud of it. Of course, as the instructors and the administrators, we were super proud of their initiative. But yeah, so I mean, it's not going to blow you away, but it was really a great endeavor for them. Yeah.
So, but can we still use code, that source code?
I think that when they did it, I believe that they wanted it to be open like that. But like I said, I tagged my coworker on the tweet, so I'm hoping to pull her into the conversation so that she can kind of give her insight into maybe some things that I didn't see. Maybe be even more honest about the process.
Anyone else? All right, well then I'm done here. Thank you for your time.